The weekly Industry Angel podcast hears from business leaders and entrepreneurs who share their stories and that all-important light bulb moment. This can inspire us all and maybe scratch that itch and kickstart that idea that keeps you awake at night. Welcome to episode 45 of the Industry Angel. I've really enjoyed your messages this last couple of weeks about episode 44. That was with Elaine talking to Amazon merch. So the overall theme is that you guys have just went, well, we've got nothing to lose. Let's go for an Amazon merch invite. So in a few months' time, when you guys are smashing out some crazy designs, keep in touch. Let me know how it's going. We'll dominate Amazon merch, I think. Thanks for spreading the show to your friends and to your colleagues. I've had a lot of stories about you telling me that people have took value from it and they've really enjoyed the shows. They've just found them and they're on a mission going right the way back through the 40-odd episodes we've got so far. So thanks for that. That's what we want to do, help as many people as possible. Remember, we're all over social. So we've got Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn groups. So I want you guys, as your homework, to hook up, get social, get commenting, get sharing, liking, and spread the word. A topic that you asked for recently was this one, coming up shortly. So again, let me know if you need any further help and you'd like to hear any other guests. So let's get straight on with it. Today we have Simon Raybould. Simon is a speaker, author, and a specialist trainer for presentations and public speaking. Welcome to the Industry Angels, Simon.
Hi, good to be here.
Based in Newcastle, Simon, yeah?
Yeah, well, technically just outside Newcastle, but only Geordies are going to know the difference between Newcastle and North Shields.
So you're a Geordie lad then?
Born in Sheffield, came to university as an undergraduate, fell head over heels in love with the place. So hand on heart, yes, I'm a Geordie, but I wasn't born here.
Well, that means you might have an accent a bit like Jimmy Neal or Sting then, where they try and tone it right down.
My accent, if I go home to where my parents used to live in Sheffield, my accent goes right broad Yorkshire, that quite quick, like. But I tend not to. I tend to try and avoid accents when I can, because in my line of work, an accent is not always helpful.
Ah, well, there you go. So is that why, I mean, even Robson Green, is that why they tone it right down then?
That's one of the reasons. Another reason for them toning it down is because, to be honest, Geordie is such a distinctive accent. If you're not used to it, by the time you've slowed down enough for people to understand what you're saying in a Geordie accent, you sound like a muppet. Because you have to talk geet, slow, so that these Southerners can understand you.
Right.
The problem, of course, is that because they hear you speaking slowly, they think it's you that's the muppet, rather than just because you're speaking slowly for them.
It's fair enough. So I'm going to read a bit of your bio. As a speaker, you specialise in resilience, emotional robustness, public speaking, and presenting. As a trainer, you're the director of training company Aware Plus, and you have a particular speciality as a trainer and coach, helping anyone who wants to make better use of their voice or who wants to make better presentations. Does that sound correct?
Well, I wrote it, so it should be, yeah.
Good, yeah. Good, man. Well, I pulled it off your LinkedIn, so if it's not right, you need to get your hands slapped because LinkedIn's out of date, but it's all good, yeah?
It's all good, yeah.
What we've got there, speaker, trainer. What is your passion? What do you love to do?
The thing that gets me out of bed, the thing that I'm famous for, the things that the books are all about, is training people in how to make better business presentations. That's at the core of all of that. So as a speaker, what I tend to speak about more these days than anything else is presentations and nerves and the stuff that come around that, hence the other things, the confidence stuff. As a trainer, I'm much more in demand these days as a trainer in business presentation skills than in anything else.
Is that because, public speaking's, it's got to be up there with one of the greatest fears, am I right?
It is. There's all kinds of surveys that say that, it's the most common fear and all of that kind of jazz. But to be honest, every time you say that to people, everybody goes, yes, I know what you mean. I know somebody who needs your training. and the fear of public speaking is so great that people are frightened to be trained in presentations and public speaking, because they'd rather be crap at it than actually risk taking some training. The fear of actually standing there in a training room is so great, they'd rather not do it. It's kind of like being fat and overweight and going, I'm so fat and overweight, I don't go to the gym. Which logically makes no sense, but that's where people are, I'm afraid.
So is your training quite daunting then? I mean,
oh God, no. Do I sound like a daunting kind of bloke? No, it's very relaxed. It's very informal. We laugh as hard as we work. Don't get me wrong. We work really hard, but we laugh an awful lot as well.
Wait, the reason I ask is because a mate of mine went on some training, and they made him. What did they make him do? Get on stage in front of a load of other people, dress like a jockey, and pretend to ride a horse through the Grand National and win it. So he was whipping this fake horse, and nothing like that. No.
Words fail me. I can't think of anything more counterproductive or mind-bogglingly stupid. Unless you're a drama student learning to mime how to ride a horse, I can't think of anything more counterproductive and stupid. Because all that does is, even if there was any benefit in it, all it does is just make people anxious about the training. No, we specialise in... I have a research background as a research scientist. I spent 24 years as a researcher at universities. I have a PhD in very hard sums and all of that kind of jazz. So everything we do is based upon what we know scientifically to work. We don't go in for the humiliation type stuff. We go, look, this kind of phrase works, that kind of image works, this kind of behaviour under these kind of circumstances works for the kind of presentation you're trying to make. And it gets me quite cross, it gets me quite hot under the collar when you hear people giving, I'm a presentations trainer. Okay, so what do you know about presentations? Well, I made a couple of presentations that seem to go quite well. And please, that doesn't make you a presentations trainer. That makes you a wiki trainer, a what I know is trainer. What I know is what worked for me, but that's not works for the people that you're training. So we are scientists and trainers. And the reason I stress the and trainers bit is that me and all of my team have all got experience as professionals, as performers as well, so dancers and actors and playwrights and fire eaters and that kind of stuff. So we know what it's like to be in front of an audience, as well as PhDs and master's degrees and things, so we know what scientifically works.
You mentioned something I picked up on there. You mentioned things that are relevant in a presentation, and you mentioned image. So are you saying images you use as on like PowerPoint, or your image yourself in terms of how you look?
I was thinking at that point in terms of images in terms of PowerPoint, but your personal image and your personal brand is also important, yes.
Can we cover both off? So in terms of the PowerPoint, so you've seen them, you've seen them death by PowerPoint slides, obviously, with the awful...
The number of times if I'd had a sniper rifle, the presentation would have been shorter, is beggars belief, yeah. Well,
I've just seen one today, actually. The awful stock photography you see where it's like, I don't know, men shaking hands or a globe and a jigsaw putting together and things. Like, oh my word. So is that what you're saying? You've got to really...
That's just basically what that person has done is they've read the books that go, you need to use an image. But without telling anybody why they have to use an image, they've just gone off and bought the first image that comes up. If you go to some kind of image selling website and you put in globe, it'll give you some kind of picture of the Earth from space. But that's not
just grab that.
Yeah, just grab that without understanding why they've got to use images or what kind of images. And that's the difference between us and your bog standard presentations trainer. We explain to people why it is. And the key thing about it, that while I'm here I might as well froth at the mouth a little bit more. The key thing about it is that the image has to have what's called backstory. It has to make an emotional connection with your audience and be relevant to the topic on hand. So for example, if you're teaching medical students about the interior of the knee, the best way of training them so that they remember what the inside of people's broken up knees looks like is to show them a picture of the knee so they have an emotional connection to it. So you show them a damaged knee or something and they go, ugh, and then you talk to them about the broken knee. Because once they've made the emotional connection and they've got the emotional engagement from the picture, they're in a better mental position to remember the stuff you tell them about how to mend knees and what the inside of knees looks like. So it's not just a question of showing them a photograph of a knee, it's a question of showing them a photograph of a knee with which they emotionally connect.
Love it. So when you do your training, Simon, with clients, and Adam, let's pick a client who's in software and they are selling software to manufacturers, how do you really deep dive into what their presentation might look like and help them shape that?
What I tend to do less of these days is design presentations for people.
Right.
What I do is show them the process by which they can design their own presentations. So if I design a presentation with them, in fact I don't ever design a presentation with somebody. I will design a presentation, I don't design for people, I design with people, and as I do it I explain why we're doing it and what works, so that by the end of the training with me they don't need me again. They've got it, they understand the principles of what it is that they are doing.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm gonna keep going this because I know there's going to be some listeners who are getting value out of this. So we've got the emotional ties. What's the process about bullet points? What you're doing here? How much text on it? Sorry, I get hung up on PowerPoints, but everyone listening here is going to be doing PowerPoints regularly. So how much text on a slide?
Have you heard that old adage about how long should a lady's skirt be?
Ah, right, okay, yes, I think I have.
Yeah?
Just near the knee or something. Yeah,
as long as much text as you need to get the information over, but as little as possible to look at. It's a question of whatever works. And anybody who tries to pretend that there is a formula that equates to a certain number of words and a certain font size is missing the damned point. Now, I can give you those formulas, but just giving you the number doesn't help you, because what you do then is if I said 6 words per slide, everybody would go off and write, Simon says 6 words per slide maximum. But what happens if the best way of getting your notes over, your concept over, is to have just 3 words, or no words, or 9 words, or 12 words? And if I've given you a rule rather than a principle, people blindly stick to the rules.
Yeah.
Now there are some rules, there are some rules like don't use Times New Roman and don't have your text in anything less than 32 points and that kind of stuff. But by and large, in terms of communicating so that people remember it, what you're looking for is the principle that sits behind the rules rather than the rules themselves.
So we've got our presentation up there. We've got a few bullet points. What's your thoughts on kind of memorizing the presentation or having crib cards?
Crib cards are definitely better than memorizing it. If you memorize something, two things go wrong. The first is you sound like a robot and you make no contact with your audience. And secondly, it just makes it so damned hard. The best way of making a presentation is to create the presentation by rehearsing it. So don't write it, just crib down some keywords and then practice the presentation over and over. And in the process of doing that, you'll start to memorize not exactly what you're going to say, but the sort of thing you are going to say. Now, at that point, when you go live, it's a bit like jazz. Nobody knows the actual notes they're going to play when they stand up to improvise jazz, but they do know the themes they're going to be working with, and that gives them the confidence to be able to mess about. And that means that when you go live, you can improv slightly around well-rehearsed themes, which gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you the spontaneity and liveliness and interest of making things up on the spur of the moment, but it's all within a very tight structure. You have to have the structure, otherwise you wander all over the place and you bore your audience to tears. But if you just have structure and you have no spontaneity, that gets boring as well.
So notes are fine, yeah?
Notes are fine. Keywords are fine. The best way of doing it, to be honest, on a technical level, if you're using PowerPoint, which is frankly not the best tool on the planet, but if you are using PowerPoint, fire up something called Presenter View within PowerPoint. I cannot begin to describe how useful Presenter View is for people. It means that what you see on your laptop in front of you is not what the audience sees on the big screen. They see a slide, and what you see, well, it depends on how you customize it, but what you see is that slide plus the next slide. Oh, how useful is that? Plus notes about the current slide, which means you can have your keywords in those notes. You just glance down at your monitor and it's got half a dozen keywords, so you remember what you're supposed to be saying as that slide is up there, but no script. So you're not reading it, you're just glancing down, seeing a couple of keywords, and talking about those keywords for that slide. It also helps so much with nerves, because if you've got that little prompt in front of you, you're laughing.
Yeah, I've used that a few times, but sometimes I don't like to rely on that too much, because if you're suddenly not behind a lectern and you're up in the middle of the audience and you're kind of walking back and forth, you don't have that.
I see. Now I've got an advantage here because I use Keynote, which means I can use my iPhone as a remote control for my laptop. So if I'm in that circumstance, which I am an awful lot, because no good presenter sticks behind a lectern, all I have to do is glance down at my iPhone and it gives me the same information.
Right. Is that just an app, Simon?
Yeah, the app's called Keynote. It's the Mac version of PowerPoint. Now, the downside of that is you have to be a Mac user before you can get hold of that. And we all know they're better and cheaper in the long term, but there's a question of getting corporate organisations to move over to Macs. That's an issue. But to go back to what you said there about not being able to behind a lectern and see your laptop, the slides you use, the notes you put into presenter view should be written in a big enough font to mean that, frankly, when you glance over at your laptop, even from the middle of the stage, a good few meters away, you should still be able to see your keywords.
Right, nice tip. Okay. So we're up there, we're on stage, we're killing it. But how do you prepare for getting out there in front of the audience, in terms of breathing and getting yourself psyched up?
Okay, you mean dealing with the nerves or designing this? Okay, well, can I go back one before that?
Yes, you can.
And point out that most people don't know what a successful presentation looks like, which is part of the reason they get nervous in the first place.
Okay.
Because all people concentrate on is what could go wrong in this presentation. And I'm not talking about professional speakers and presenters here. I'm talking about normal people who've got to make a business presentation. Okay, so maybe you're an accountant or a lawyer or something, and now you've got to make a presentation about accounting or lawyering. Is that really a word? Lawyering? What? But what I mean.
It is now.
It is now. Lawyering. To lawyer, it's a verb. I lawyer, you lawyer, he, she, it lawyers, they lawyer, we lawyer. Yeah. So maybe normal people who've got a professional job and they now have to talk about it. They're not professionals. So what they have to do is this: instead of asking themselves what could go wrong with this presentation, ask yourself this question: what is this presentation for? What will success look like? And how will I know what success looks like when I actually see it? Because most people are going, I don't want to make a fool of myself. And that puts you in a very negative mindset. A much more profound and useful approach is to go, okay, what I need to get out of this presentation is 20%, for example, 20% of my audience to adopt the new way of doing XYZ, whatever XYZ is. And at that point, you at least know what a successful presentation looks like. Is that making sense?
No. Yeah.
So, far too many people judge their presentation by how well it went in the room. And that's about as sensible as judging your presentation in the same way as you judge a report. You're not going to write a report for your boss and hope that what he comments on is that was a really well-bound report. I particularly liked I liked the binder you used, and the colour of the gold embossing on the front was splendid, and it was an excellent choice of font. I really did enjoy and the font on page 13 was profound. Well, that's tosh. No one's going to write a report like that. You measure a report by how successfully it's implemented.
So in terms of that success, how do you get the return? Like, how do you understand that that's been a successful presentation you gave? Is it the response from the audience throughout the whole
different from every presentation, isn't it? Because by definition, you need to know what it is you want out of that presentation. Sometimes, frankly, it is going to be just to survive, yes. Just to get to the end of it without looking like an idiot. But sometimes your target is much more likely to be provide 3 options to my boss and get him to pick this one rather than the other 2. Yeah. And at that point, your presentation is a success. Now, not only does that deal with your nerves a lot more, because you know now that what you're trying to, you have a definite target for a measure for success, but it also makes the presentation much easier to design, because you're not just talking about topic XYZ. You're talking about topic XYZ so that ABC happens.
Yeah, no,
that makes
that's
it
great.
Really significant. If you don't, it's just like, I'm going to sit in my car and drive. Why? I don't know. I'm just going to drive. Well, nobody does that.
Someone's asked us to.
Yeah. You drive in your car to get somewhere, not for the sake of driving. And yes, I know, the analogy breaks down when you start talking about people who just enjoy driving for the sake of it. But for normal people, we drive to get from point A to point B.
I mentioned something about the audience there. So would you ever do your homework on the audience? So before you're going to do a presentation, if it was a big presentation, say you've got a speaker here who's talking about, I don't know, let's say social media at a keynote, would it be beneficial to go onto Twitter, hit that hashtag and see what the audience is like and what kind of things they're interested in and asking what kind of questions they're asking? Or
it depends on how significant the presentation is. If it's a 10-minute presentation at work that you do every week, then probably it's not worth, the cost-benefit ratio is not worth it. But if it's a big gig with a lot riding on it, then yeah. So, for example, I'm opening the Professional Speaking Association's training conference in April. I know what my audience is going to be like because they're professional speakers.
No pressure.
No pressure. The opening speaker at the Professional Speaking Association, talking to them about making business presentations. The stakes don't get any higher. So at that point, yeah, sure, I'm going to start researching my audience. But, and here's the critical thing, the research is very clear about a concept called triage, because there are some people in your audience who are never going to agree with what you say, no matter what you say.
Okay.
And at that point, anything you say to those people is wasted effort. There are some people who are going to agree with what you say just because they like you and they like the colour of your hair or whatever. And again, anything you say to those people over and above the minimum is wasted effort. Brutally, and this is a really brutal approach, the people to whom you should be targeting your audience are those people in the middle who won't agree with you unless you target them and speak to them, but who will agree with you if you do target them and speak to them. So those are the key decision makers in your audience, and at that point, because there are far fewer of them than the big audience, it's much easier to do a quick bit of research on them. So maybe there are 12 people or 30 people in the room, but if you know who the key decision makers are that you need to target, you perhaps only need to research 4, maybe it's 5 of them.
That's an excellent point. So if you didn't know them, are you just literally looking for those physical nods of the head and affirmations and things like that?
Be careful with that.
Okay.
I mean, yes, by all means look for it, but be careful with it because just to fall back on some Jungian psychology for a moment, some people are extroverted and more demonstrative in what they are thinking than others. Now, just because I'm not demonstrating that I agree with you by nodding my head doesn't mean that I disagree with you. It just means that I'm not demonstrating that I agree with you.
Right.
So just because, and by the same token and the other way around, just because people are nodding doesn't always mean they agree with you. What it means is they agree with the way you are saying it and they are kind of encouraging you. It's the visual equivalent of going, go on.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so you've just gone, yeah, to encourage me to carry on speaking. A nod of the head in the audience is that. So don't just
totally
look for the nods. Try and look beyond the nods to whether, for example, they jot something down at key points. So if
I
you
think
say
also it's a bit of a pat on the back as well, like, you're doing great, carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the easiest mistake for a nervous presenter to make is to spot people that are nodding and start playing to those people who nod, because that's the safest.
That's why I asked, yes.
Yeah. So you need to figure out who your targets are and aim for them. I mean, don't offend everybody else. I don't actually go out of my way to be rude to people in my audience. But as a business presenter, I know that there are certain key people in the room.
Okay. Excellent. I mentioned about image. I scribbled that down there. Can we go back to that? So in terms of how you look?
Okay. There's a guy called Guy Kawasaki. Great speaker. Astonishing bloke. His suggestion is that you should always dress one level of formality up from your audience. The logic being that one level of formality gives you a bit of authority, but you want to be only one level of authority, one level of formality, because otherwise you're too far away from them. You're too estranged from them. And I agree with this principle, but as a pro tip here, a dirty trick, I suggest you turn up for your gig 2 levels of formality up, because if you have made a mistake, it is much easier to come down a level of formality.
Okay.
Right. So, for example, if I expect my audience to
take the top hat off.
Yeah, exactly. If I turn up in a shirt and tie, and I realise that my audience are in jeans and t-shirts, shirt and tie is too much, but I can take my tie off and be in an open-necked shirt with the sleeves rolled up in about 10 seconds. Whereas if I don't have a tie with me, I can't magically create one out of thin air. Now, I'm aware that there's kind of half of your audience are going, yes, that's a sexist example. You're right, that is a sexist example. I'm using myself as the example, but there are female equivalents to that as well, of course.
Yeah, there certainly is, and I think it's a bit of a bone of contention at the moment in terms of getting dressed up and the open neck to the tie. It's you see a lot of speakers now just going very casual. But that's their brand.
That's their brand. But if they're professional speakers, their brand is something different from what I'm talking about.
Okay.
My brand is very clear. My brand is as a straight-talking, no-nonsense research scientist who explains how to communicate and what works. So people expect me to look a certain way, and I do, because I'm a professional. But if you are Joe Bloggs from IT trying to make a presentation about why people should adopt better passwords in the company so that they don't get hacked as much, you're a different kind of person. You're doing a different kind of presentation.
In terms of that audience and being interactive with them, we're talking about nodding there. Do you wander? Do you wander up and down, or do you
wander? Never.
In one spot?
Wander? Never. No? Move? Yes.
Right.
But moving is different from wandering. Wandering is defined as aimless movement.
Okay.
And by definition, therefore, it's you shouldn't be doing it. There is a technique called spatial anchoring, which is really quite a powerful technique. It's a very advanced technique, so don't freak out if it doesn't make sense to people, but just try this for a second. Mm-hmm. Suppose you stand on the left-hand side of the stage and you describe a problem. And then you move to the right-hand side of the stage and describe the solution to that problem. But then you go, of course, this is expensive, and you move back to the left-hand side of the stage and explain the bad news about how expensive your solution is. But then you move back to the right-hand side of the stage and go, so here's what I propose. You see the pattern that's being set up. Left-hand side of the stage is the problem, right hand is the solution.
Now, this goes back to your science behind this, because you're not just wandering left to right aimlessly. Mm-hmm. There's actually a science behind this and a reason behind this. Excellent.
That's right. You're conditioning your audience to expect solutions from the right-hand side of the stage.
That's brilliant. Like I say, the reason I ask is I was at a presentation recently, and the chap who was giving it was on a bit of a raised stage, and it was a wooden floor, and he had these hobnail boots on, and he just paced left to right, and there was no science behind it. It was just...
nervous energy.
Yeah, possibly, but it was just thud, thud, thud. And I was like in the front row, and at the finish, I was thinking, I'm going to either drag you off that stage or I'll pull your boots off, something, because it was destroying us. But so yeah,
I would know that, because I would have done that on a quick test before the audience came in, and you walk across the stage, you go, ooh, heck, that's not working.
Yes.
And you do something
pull
different.
The plimsolls out.
Pull the pumps out, yeah. It depends on what you're wearing, of course. But honestly, if you're on a raised stage and you're above your audience, now I'm not suggesting that people do this, please don't take me literally, but if you're on a raised stage so that you're above your audience, people can't see your feet.
Right, okay.
Now at that point, you could literally be in trainers.
So yeah, that's a really good tip. And so you're not aimlessly wandering; it's actually purposeful.
It's for a reason, absolutely for a reason. Another example you might want to consider is just ask yourself: when you've read a novel last, when you get to the end of a chapter, half the page is blank, and then there's a title for the start of the new chapter. That's kind of the way novels are structured. Is that? Even if even if it's a long time since you read a novel, are you okay with that idea? There's this blank space in it. Okay. Well, you can use moving on stage to do exactly the same thing. You finish a topic on one side of the stage, Then there is a black slide, and you say to your audience, okay, that wraps it up for topic 2. Now, let's talk about topic 3. But as you've done that, you've moved to the other side of the stage over a black slide. Now the title screen comes up for topic 3, and you're away. But not only have you had the black slide and the title on your screen to tell your audience it's a new topic, you have physically changed location on the stage to tell your audience it's a new topic, and they start to pay attention an awful lot more than if you'd stood exactly where you were.
So is that like kind of wiping the slate clean?
Yeah, exactly.
You're starting again, right?
Exactly,
okay, cool.
Exactly. I mean, when I say left-hand side of the stage and right-hand side of the stage, don't take me too literally on that. You could do it the other way around, or you could do front of the back of the stage, or you could do it sitting down and standing up, or you could do any one of a number of things. But the principle is to wipe the slate clean when you start a new topic.
You mentioned something there about the audience. In terms of keeping the audience alert, if you feel like they're wandering, what tips have you got for there? Is it the pause, or what do you do?
If you notice that your audience are asleep, you have already screwed up.
Right.
Okay. The trick is never to let them get to that position. There are lots of tips and techniques that you can use there, but there's a big myth I want to debunk here, which is the idea that audience attention spans are limited, and you have to limit what you say to fit their attention spans. And you've heard all this stuff about, attention spans have gone down from 20 minutes to 12 minutes, and then 12 seconds to 8 seconds, and we now have no more attention span than a goldfish. And that's tosh. Absolute tosh. It does no service to goldfish, because they've actually got attention spans of a lot better than 12 seconds. In fact, research scientists use goldfish in their experiments to figure out how to teach things. They learn in just the same way as dogs and cats do, probably better than cats because they're not so stubborn.
Right.
So that not only is that not fair on goldfish, there's no evidence at all that our attention span has diluted. What's happened is that the world has got more complicated, so there's more stuff for us to pay attention to.
Yes.
Which means that what you need to do is make your presentation the most interesting thing that is going on. And if you do that, people will be able to concentrate with you for pretty much as long as it takes. Now, that's not literally the case. People will eventually start to lose it after a while, because they will get knackered, they will get exhausted, and their brain starts to slow down. But so long as you've not actually overtaxed their ability to think and concentrate, you can get people to concentrate for a lot longer than you think you do. If you do get to the point where they're losing it, a good way of handling it is to use something called a black box technique. A black box technique. Let me ask you a question. Let me give you an example of black boxing. Have you ever used Excel?
Yes.
Okay. Have you used Excel to sort a column of data?
Yes.
Do you know how the actual algorithm underneath that sorting process works?
Don't care.
Yeah, right. Nobody cares except the people that actually code it. Right. Exactly my point. So suppose you're talking to people and you realize that what you've been doing is going off on a tangent and telling them about the actual coding, the actual algorithm that sits underneath it, the computer code, and they've started to get bored. What you do is you put that in a little black box. You go, okay, if you've understood that coding, great. If you haven't, what you need to know is there's a little magic black box called sort. And what happens is that random data goes in and sorted data comes out. And the next thing you do is use that sorted data. So you with me? Is that making sense? So that's that's the end of your chapter. You wrap it up and you go, if you've understood that, great. If you haven't, here's a summary of what you need in order to be able to follow on for the rest of the presentation. And then you do your chapter ending thing, where you go, okay, we've finished talking about the sort algorithm, now let's talk about something else. And you have your black slide and your title slide, and you move aside the stage and all of that kind of jazz, just to let people know that you're hitting the reset button. And that reset button is the key thing. It could be a change of presenter, it could be a change of medium, or any one of those things would work.
I mean, that's excellent, because sometimes when you've been turned off by a presenter, it might just be the topic they're talking about, or that subject. So wiping the slate clean, starting again, gives them a second chance to win you over.
Yep, because in a traditional, old-fashioned linear presentation where you talk about talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if they don't understand topic 2 or they fall asleep in topic 3, They don't understand anything for topics 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whereas if you have a black box thing with lots of chapters in it, you can pick them up at the chapter ends.
Would you actually say those words like, here's a box?
Depends how badly asleep they'd fallen.
But that's the concept behind it.
That's the concept behind it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, just looking at the time, we'll have a couple of more questions. So in terms of nerves, Simon, what do you do with super nervous people? I know we've talked about get the success.
Know
right.
what success looks like. Okay,
yes,
right.
all this good stuff. But look, my breathing's, I'm clammy, I'm really nervous. What do you do?
There's a whole bunch of exercises. You can train people to breathe in a different way. You can show them technical tricks such as presenter view, or there's quite a lot of really interesting research now that looks at how to reframe, there's a bit of jargon for you, how to reframe nerves as excitement, so that instead of telling yourself, oh my God, I'm terrified, you say to yourself, oh my goodness, I'm really excited. And literally just saying, I am excited, starts to have a biofeedback inside your head so that different things start to work in different ways. Or there's a technique we use called sentence zero, and lowering the pitch of your voice, breathing in certain ways. Oh, so many. I mean, I've done so many different ways about this. I don't know where to start with them. Another technique might be something as simple as a checklist, because it turns out when you unpack what people are nervous about, a lot of it is just nervous of the sheer logistics and mechanics.
Yeah.
Now, each of those little things, is my battery, are my batteries charged? Does the range of my remote control clicker reach to my laptop? Do my slides work on this new laptop? Have I got enough handouts? All of those trivial little questions at the back of people's heads, each of them is just a fraction of a nerve, but added together, they start to make people really quite anxious. So it could just be that something as a simple checklist, we call ours ties and flies, by the way, something as simple as a tie and fly neck checklist before you go on stage, before you make your presentation, and you literally just go down the list and go, have I checked this? Tick. Have I checked that? Tick. Have I checked the other? Tick. Is my tie straight? Tick. Are my flies fastened? Tick. That's why they're called ties and flies. It's just it's a stupid in-house joke as far as we're concerned. I've never gone on stage yet with my my ties fastened, but this was the first time. It's become it's become a joke in the company. The last thing to check before you go on stage. But that means that it means that you've got this ritual before you go on stage, and you know that anything that could technically go wrong won't, because you've checked it. Add that to your breathing, add that to your presentation, your presenter view, and add that to knowing what success looks like, and frankly, adding it to something I said earlier on about knowing who it is you're trying to impress. So you're not trying to impress the entire audience. All of those things start to make nerves an awful lot easier to control.
Excellent. So the days of a charlatan telling you to look at them as they're naked.
Oh, please! No!
You've heard that.
Right.
How many times have you heard that in your presentation?
I can't begin. I mean, apart from anything else, I'm now really stroppily pacing across my office.
I'm really glad this is not on video and it's just podcast.
Oh man, you can see me frothing at the mouth now. Apart from anything else, that is just hugely disrespectful to your audience, isn't it?
It is indeed.
How can you expect your audience to treat you with courtesy and professional respect if you're not doing the same to them? If you're standing there pretending to think what their underwear looks like, how can you possibly have a serious conversation with them? Now, apart from anything else, it increases something called cognitive load. It makes it harder for you to think, because what it's doing is giving you yet another thing to think about.
Right.
And one of the things that makes people nervous is because there are so many things to think about when they're making a presentation. So why would you give yourself something extra to think about? It's just making the situation worse. If I found out who came up with that stupid idea, I'd wet fish them.
Well, Simon, there's been lots of value in this discussion. Where can we find you? Did you say you had a book as well?
Oh, yeah, the book, a year and a bit now. I was quite pleased with that. It stonked into the top 10 business sellers best list, which is always nice. You're walking through an airport and there's your book on W.H. Smith, top shelf.
And it's called, to get into as well.
It is. It's called Presentation Genius is the book. It's 40 chapters, each chapter based upon a specific problem, looking at the science behind how to deal with that problem. Reviewers have told me, and I like to think, that it's written in a very accessible way, a very chatty way, so it's an easy read. The website that all my stuff is based on is called presentationgenius.info. And if you want to get in touch, the best way of doing it is either to email me simon@presentationgenius.info, or if you're using Twitter, my Twitter handle is @presentations.
Excellent stuff. Thanks for that. I shall add them to the show notes so our audience can jump onto industryangel.com and they'll see all those lovely links there for them. So Simon, that's been really good. I've took some value out of this, so I've been scribbling notes and I'm going to listen back to this as well. So thanks very much for that.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. What a top guy Simon is. If anyone's going to walk the walk and talk the talk, quite literally, it's Simon. He's got the science and the art nailed. So I hope you took a lot of value from that. You made some great notes. I did. It was excellent. As I mentioned, all the links will be on industryangel.com. That was another topic that you guys asked for. So you can drop me a line, host@industryangel.com, for all your further guest and topic suggestions. Leave me feedback. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like and how you use the show. I'm really interested on what platforms you use also. Get across to the Facebook page, hit the like button, and let me know your comments. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrer, this is the Industry Angel, and thanks for listening.